In some mild regions, you can leave these geraniums outside or on a city balcony if it's well sheltered. However, in colder regions, it is mandatory to winter these geraniums, otherwise they risk freezing. Even though geraniums are sensitive to cold, it is still important to differentiate between the different types of geraniums. Here, we are dealing with ivy geraniums or zonal geraniums called pelargoniums, not to be confused with perennial geraniums, which often come in blue or pink colors. While geraniums are commonly used in cities and villages for flowering, it must be acknowledged that they are very hardy plants. They tolerate sun, drought, and heat waves. As long as you have large planters with a minimum amount of fertilizer, you can get beautiful geraniums. Geraniums that are so important that we would like and wish to bring them inside. With such volume, it is quite obvious that it is very difficult to bring them in. The solution is to prune them. By shortening the plants, it will be much easier to bring them indoors. So here we have a basin. We have geraniums, lobelias, nemesia, saphinia or petunia, and we even have a bit of bidens. So we are going to pull them out since we couldn't bring in such a large planter unless you have enough space, but that's rarely the case. So I pull them out and we will bring them in. Almost bare rooted. So these are plants that I will now bring into a cold greenhouse, which could also be a veranda or a cool room under shelter. Since our geraniums take up a lot of space, we are going to cut them back to 10 or 15 centimeters from the root ball. So, to save space, we will remove the soil from the base. Our grandmothers also used this technique. They would hang the geraniums in the attic, a place where they wouldn't freeze, with the roots facing up, and let them dry throughout the winter. And the geraniums, once repotted in the spring, would start growing again. Here it's the same principle. Since we have several ivy geraniums, I will do the same with others. We cut them back. I use a large pot, fill it with soil, so soil with sand, not too rich. It's unnecessary because they don't need to feed during the winter. And I will repot my geraniums in this container or in this pot, and I add a little bit of soil. That's it for the first series. Another technique, if you have geraniums, for example, zonal geraniums like this one, is that they have a large volume. If you leave it in the warmth, it might even bloom indoors. If you lack space, following the same principle, I cut back my geranium. If you have a heated greenhouse or simply a veranda, you also have the option to take a cutting. You take this dry stem, plant it directly in a small pot, place it in light and warmth, and you'll have one more geranium. That's it for the zonal geraniums, and you can apply the exact same principle with ivy geraniums. We will use the surface of the cut. And I cut everything around it, always to reduce the volume. So if I took cuttings from the zonal geranium, you can also take cuttings from the ivy geraniums. To properly preserve your geraniums throughout the winter period, you should not overwater them. Watering will mainly depend on the light and heat. If there is little or no light, you hardly water at all. One last thing, during the winter period, during wintering, it is always a good idea to check your plants for any yellow leaves or black leaves that are rotting inside, as this would be detrimental to the plants. And starting from March or April, when it begins to warm up, you take out your geraniums and water them lightly. And basically, that's it for these geraniums and for the other ivy geraniums. You should unpot them and repot them into individual pots